Hello and welcome back to Exothermic Plays Games. I'm Exothermic and I've been doing a daily countdown of my 366 favorite video games of all time. Coming in at number 19 is Undertale. Undertale is one of the greatest accomplishments in the history of the industry, and Toby Fox is an absolute treasure. When I ranked Earthbound as my 68th favorite game, I applauded its focus on toning down the violence the industry had been moving towards, and its cute, whimsical art direction and characters. I expressed how it was one of the greatest, most unique games ever made, and despite showing some age, it was insane to me that it took over 20 years for anyone else to make a game that could capture the pure magic and wonder that made Earthbound so brilliant. 21 years after the Japanese release of Earthbound, and 20 years after the North American release, Toby Fox unleashed his absolute masterpiece of interactive fiction, taking heavy inspiration, of course, from Earthbound, and Fox did basically everything except designing the artwork and sprite assets. He wrote the story, he coded the game, he wrote the music, all of it. The game starts off with a child falling down from a deep, dark hole. You're in a scary place filled with what appears to be monsters, and even your first interaction with this adorable little sunflower winds up being a trick. But then you are saved by a bunny person? Her name is Toriel, and she's just this amazing, sweet, kind lady. She protects you and guides you to her house. She feeds you, gives you a safe place to sleep, and is generally just great. You stay there for a while and even stay overnight. You can actually stay for quite a while if you want and just kind of live your happy life, but that's not really the game. Maybe Toriel wants you to stay forever and panics at the idea of you asking about the possibility of leaving. Maybe I'm starting to get a little paranoid about this lady. And in hindsight, I feel pretty bad about that. In hindsight, I feel kind of bad about a lot of things. Undertale is a game where the ranking is strongly dictated by the story and characters, so I can't really give a spoiler-free version of this video, so be warned going forward, but also know that this is only one storyline, as there's many branches, though it's the one I consider to be canon in my own head. You discover a secret tunnel underneath the home. As you try to leave, Toriel explains that you can't because the ruler of the underground, Asgore, wants very much to kill you and steal your soul. So, in order to leave, you have to get past her. Combat in this game is fascinating. Not only is it great mechanically, it ties directly into the storytelling of the game. There are two ways to go through different encounters. You can, as you might in a traditional role-playing game, actually fight these horrifying monsters. There's a little bar that you have to time your press right to land attacks, and you can gain experience and level up and get better gear and do all of the normal role-playing stuff. Alternatively, you can help them. Each time an enemy attacks you, there's some bullet hell-esque gameplay element where you're just represented by a heart in a box and you have to dodge their attacks. Each enemy type has unique attack patterns and it's fun to learn them all. It's important to mention that I'm not good at bullet hell games, and despite this, I persevered through this game because the story is absolutely worth it. As you dodge these attacks, you can perform actions and there's different options for each enemy. Maybe you discover that they're feeling down and you can give them words of encouragement. Maybe your enemy's a dog and you pet them. Whatever it is, eventually the spare ability will light up and you can spare them, convincing them they don't need to and really should not fight you. It is possible to spare Toriel, but it takes a long time, and that's a whole lot of bullet hell to survive. I took this video as an opportunity to finally convince my wife to play Undertale because she hadn't yet, so we kind of took turns switching off on the game, with her playing or watching me play. She's also not good at bullet hell. Neither of us are, so that's great. She gave up on trying to spare Toriel just a little too early and wound up killing her. Basically, Toriel is your adoptive mom in this game, and, well, that affected Marie. It's meant to. Based on how you handle combat, different parts of the story will unfold in unique ways, and the denizens of Underground will approach you differently. You'll also see personality changes in your character as well. But once you leave home and Toriel behind, you enter the Underground proper. You're clearly being followed, and it seems like maybe your journey could be coming to a premature end. Fortunately for you, it's just Sans. He's a chubby skeleton, which is hilarious in its own right, but he's meant to be keeping watch over the door you just came through. More than anything, though, he just really loves awful jokes. Just not funny, but also funny because he says them. As you travel through the world of Undertale, you'll continuously discover that these monsters are actually full of life and charm and are highly charismatic, fun-loving individuals that want nothing more than a quiet life of peace and friendship. Especially the bosses you have to fight. The first boss of the game, outside of Toriel, is Papyrus, Sans' older brother. He wants to capture you so he can claim glory and win Asgore's favor. At least, that's what he thinks he wants. All he really wants is a friend that isn't his brother who will enjoy some spaghetti with him. He's actually a big ol' softy and can't bring himself to capture you because he would rather have your friendship. One thing I hadn't mentioned yet about Undertale, and I can't undersell this concept, is that it's hilarious. It's filled with silly puns and dumb jokes, but they're great. Almost every enemy has something funny when you check them to kind of learn what actions you need to do to spare them, or is based on a pun. The giant dog guards are terrific, and the idea that you get attacked with a crossword puzzle? Chef's kiss. So those two are, for now, pretty harmless. But there's a lot more threats and dangers out there waiting for you. But there sure is a lot of Underground to travel. There's different towns you can check out, and really it's just like a normal town. The monsters are just like people, and they're innocent, and I love them, and I'm getting ahead of myself here. I especially love Snowdin Town, not only for the funny name, but also the music, in the bar, and how you see enemies that were just trying to kill you, but you spared them, all hanging out and being friends, and being friendly with you, and living their lives peacefully. It's great! And seriously, going on that date with Papyrus is a highlight of the game for sure. But it's not all towns. There's lots of wilderness and dungeons and stuff too. The puzzles are fun and at times also humorous, but usually they're just solid puzzles. The second person to hunt you down is Undyne, a fearsome warrior fish person, and they are relentless. As they chase you, you can, of course, actually try to fight, but especially if you're going a more pacifistic route, that's a tall order. And you can't really spare Undyne either, but you can run away. Woohoo! Just keep running and you'll get to a volcano area. Undyne isn't really built for this and collapses from the heat. Hilariously, there's just a water cooler sitting there, and you could actually pour water on Undyne to save them. Upon waking, they recognized what happened and, embarrassed, leave you alone. Like, that's the kind of humor that is everywhere in this game, and it's so great. After Undyne, you have to deal with another great character, though they're not a threat to you, at least not directly. Alphys is a dinosaur lady, and she's the head researcher working for Asgore. Despite this, she's actually not threatening to you at all and has been following your journey with great interest and wants to help you. The most interesting thing about Undyne is the most interesting thing about Alphys. They're both madly in love with each other, but are way too shy to say anything, assuming the other one would never notice them. But yeah, Alphys is just a great big nerd, and she's awesome and hilarious in her own awkward, shy ways. But importantly, she's also the creator of Mettaton. This robot is like the only real proper celebrity in Underground, hosting several television shows on the only broadcasting network they can run down there. Fights, if we'll call them that, against Mettaton are you basically having to participate in these television shows with high stakes where you'll die if you fail, but Alphys is always one step ahead, helping Mettaton out. At least when she's not too busy essentially tweeting about her favorite Magical Girls series. There's a lot of great puzzles and enemies, but my favorite fight in the whole game is in this section when two guards find you and they do these duo attacks. But if you're trying to spare them, the way you do it is hilarious. Basically, you find out you can start cleaning their armor, and eventually they start getting really hot, because I guess cleaning the armor makes it not reflect heat, so they get all hot and sweaty. And one of them eventually gets so hot from the surrounding lava and stuff that he tears his armor off, exposing his ripped body. This is very distracting for his partner, and eventually he professes his love for this colleague, and then they go off as two enormous gay dudes into the sunset to start their new life together. Later, you see them out on a date, and it's so wholesome and fantastic, and I love it. But once you finally get to the last section with Mettaton, it reveals that this whole thing has been a ruse from Alphys to insert herself into your story, and she would rush in and save the day by deactivating Mettaton and then defeating you though and taking you to Asgore. This turns out, despite what I originally thought, to be the absolute truth, and Alphys really was planning an elaborate trap for you, which is just such a horrible, painful betrayal. This was the character that I thought liked me the most, and they were actually out to get me for personal gain. Oh, and then Mettaton transforms into a body with legs, and you do this great big fight against him, based on the idea of it being his television finale, and there's even a part where you're prompted to type an answer to a question, and you can type legs, which is like technically the correct answer, but there's also other prompts that can happen, like if you type Toby, then there's a thing about Toby Fox, and it's just, it's all very funny, and it's like fighting robot David Bowie. It's great. There are other bosses, but none that are so plot-driven until you get to Asgore himself, of course. I skipped a bunch of little connecting parts because I don't really need to cover everything, but just know that every second of this game is delightful and charming and difficult, but oh so rewarding and fun. Before you beat Mettaton, there's actually a section where Sans takes you out to dinner. He wants to share a story with you. He explains how he was sad and alone, hating his job guarding that door. His instructions were to kill anything that comes through the door, but nothing ever did, so he'd practice his knock-knock jokes at the door until one day someone responded. Sans doesn't know this, but clearly it's Toriel. He fosters a friendship through this closed door, through terrible knock-knock jokes, but then one day, she made him promise to do everything in his power to protect any human that comes through the door. Due to this friendship, he agrees. But then, if that hadn't happened, he reveals he would have murdered you on the spot. The whole conversation reveals a lot about Sans, about why he's always following you, about his joking demeanor, but in this particular playthrough, it's especially noteworthy that I not only killed my mom, I killed Sans' best friend, and he doesn't even know I did it. Just before going to fight Asgore, Sans appears again to judge you. If you didn't really kill much, or not at all, he lets you pass. But if you gained levels and gathered a ton of experience, which actually not experience, EXP doesn't stand for that. It actually stands for extermination points, and he'll fight you as one of the hardest fights in the whole game. The part leading up to that, however, has you discovering new home and learning the actual backstory for the events leading up to the game, and it is truly an amazing sequence. Undertale is one of the most touching, heartfelt stories ever told. It consistently forces the player to check their assumptions at the door, subverting the expectations of what a retro-style role-playing game can and should be. Taking the best of old ideas and turning them on their head, creating this juxtaposition of ideologies within the story, reinforced by every single thing you hear and see, is remarkable. The mix of chiptune music with full orchestral pieces is perfect, and Toby absolutely nails both styles. Of course, there's things like this reprise of the home theme as you continue to approach the final fight, which enhances every part of the ceaseless story beats and emotions washing over me as I do it. But Megalovania, for example, is one of the greatest battle themes ever made. The revelation here of how Asgore, this supposed horrible threat you must defeat, is actually Toriel's husband, and why this all happened is just heart-wrenching. As you explore the home, knowing that Toriel made a painstaking recreation, revolutionizing her character arc, learning how they so effortlessly opened their hearts to the human that they found, making one great family, changes the tone of the entire fight ahead of you. Discovering the fate of their son and how it changed Asgore and destroyed their marriage, turning the fate of the entire kingdom into a radically different direction thanks entirely to human brashness and aggression, is especially striking. The way it can compare and contrast to your own actions throughout the game is genius. If you were violent, you learn how you are absolutely the antagonist in this world, supporting all of the claims regarding our basest and worst natures, validating Asgore's actions, and he's done this numerous times before you. If you were peaceful, however, you represent that there is an inherent good in humanity, and that Asgore and Toriel were right to take in that human child, and we are capable of great kindness and unconditional love, making it even harder for Asgore to do what he feels he must. And he does find it difficult. Asgore doesn't want to murder these kids. He's still this calm, peaceful dude at heart, and when you find him tending to a garden of flowers like the ones his son was attacked in and ultimately killed, it's agonizing, and I really don't want to have to fight him. I want so desperately to spare him, but the game literally doesn't let you, and in the fight there's actually a thing where that option is removed from the menu, but it's done like in universe. It's very cool. And actually, I've never beaten Asgore. I know there's a bit of game past this, but I'm really not very good at bullet hell, and having no combat anything to speak of makes Asgore quite difficult. This isn't truly the end of the game, as there's a few more things going on after this, even after the credits technically roll, and I've watched videos of it all. It's great, and I love how the story comes to its conclusion, and how different some parts of this are if you're going around killing stuff. But with those possible differences in mind, Undertale's true story to me will always be about this child who found themselves in the worst of circumstances and still found the strength needed to keep their chin up and lend a helping hand. You get battered and bruised, harassed, tormented, and bullied. But along the way, you make these amazing friends and do all of these wondrous things, and despite everything, it's still you. Join me tomorrow as I talk about my 18th favorite game of all time, where I probably should have asked more questions before joining this ancient order of knights.